asking you a very interesting question. I'm going to write two things on the board, and you'll tell me if you've seen it before or you know what it means. 1. Two. Have you heard of these terms before? Alex and Co, you're laughing. It's like you have seen it before. All right. What is additive inverse? I think of a number A, I add the inverse of it, B, and I'm getting 0. What is additive inverse? I think of a number A, I add the inverse, and I'm getting 0. So this is the number, this is the additive inverse. So an additive inverse is a number that makes the number, the original number, this is the original number. The additive inverse is such a number that when I add it to the original number, I will get 0. So mathematically, we say that the additive inverse is a negative of that number. So if I have A, the additive inverse will be minus A, such that when I add A to minus A, I will get 0. That's algebra. Let's use simpler terms now. 1 plus its additive inverse, which is minus 1, will give you what? 0. So what's the additive inverse of 5? It's negative 5. What's the additive inverse of 3? It's negative 3. What's the additive inverse of 1 over 2? It's negative 1 over 2. All right, I'll give you some questions to try now. All right, we are on to multiplicative inverse. A is such a number. When I multiply it with what is called the multiplicative inverse, the answer must be 1. The answer must be 1. So, what is another word for multiplicative inverse? Multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal of that number. So, the multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal of the original number. So the multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal of the original number. So if A, okay, let's come to this part of the board. I want to clean this. So if A is any number, comma, its multiplicative inverse must be 1 over A. I'm going to put a hashtag. So if A is any number, its multiplicative inverse will be what? 1 over A. So if I consider 5, the multiplicative inverse will be 1 over 5. Remember that what the multiplicative inverse does is that it makes the final answer 1. So a number and the reciprocal or its multiplicative inverse must give you 1. Okay, so given on the board is an exercise for us to try. It says find the multiplicative to additive inverse of the following. A is 8, B is 1 over 7, C is 11 over 3, D is minus 2 over 3, E is minus 2, 3 over 5, f is 9 minus 9.2 or negative 9.2. G is 1 over x raised to the power of 3, and h is x raised to the power of what? Minus y. So let's do that. So let's go. For the first one, the multiplicative inverse will be 1 over 8. We said that it's two numbers you multiply to get 1, and this is simply the reciprocal of this. For this one, it will be what? Negative 8. For this, it will be 7. For this, it will be minus 1 over 7. Notice that the additive inverse, if the number is negative, it will now be positive. If the number is positive, it will be negative. For this one, it will be 3 over 11. The reciprocal of 3 over 11, of 11 over 3 is 3 over 11. It means turn it. It will turn it. This one will now be minus 11 over 3. Look at this one. This will be minus 3 over 2. Now, for multiplicative inverse, if the number is negative, the inverse must be negative. I come again. For multiplicative inverse, if the number is negative, the inverse must be negative. But for additive inverse, if the number is positive, the inverse must be negative for additive. And if the number is negative, the additive inverse must be positive. So that's how it works. This one will now be what? Plus 2 over 3. Now we come to this one. I will do the additive first. The additive will be what? Plus 2 number 3 over 5. Now, for this one, let me clean this part of the board to explain something. Sometimes some questions require that you must do something first before you get the answer. Now, for this one, negative 2, 3 over 5. To get the multiplicative inverse, you have to change this to a proper fraction first. If you don't do that, you won't be able to solve it. So this will be negative 13 over 5. So the multiplicative inverse will now be what? Negative 5 over 13. Now, what about this one? I will do the additive because that one is straightforward. It will be what? 9.2. What about the multiplicative inverse? How do you do that? Very simple too. You need to look at this. This becomes what? Minus 9.2. I'll convert this to a proper fraction. This will be 9 times over, this is 2 over 10. I hope you know. This 0.2 means 2 over 10. So this will be negative 9, 1 over 5. And that becomes what? Negative 46 over 5. So what will now be the multiplicative inverse? It will be what? Turn it. And that will give you what? Negative 5 over 46. So please, if you didn't get it, just take note of your corrections now while I clean this part. Because I checked your textbook and I discovered that this part was not included. Now, how do you get this one? The additive inverse is simple. To just be what? Minus 1 over x raised to the power of 3. The additive inverse here will simply be what? Minus x raised to the power of minus y. Those ones are very simple. Just change the sign from positive to negative. That's what you do in additive inverse. But for multiplicative inverse, this will turn. And for this one, it will simply be what? X to the power of y. So the index turns to what? Positive. So please take note of this. I'm so happy that we have recorded this so that you can go back later and study it. I'm going to give us some time to digest this. Okay, now let's look at how this idea, this concept of multiplicative inverse and additive inverse apply to your simple equations. If you have x plus 8 equal to 12, I hear people say you move 8 to the other side. No, what you have done is that to clear this 8, you add its additive inverse to the other side. Hallelujah. You are seeing something high today. What you are doing is that you add this additive inverse. So x plus h will be equal to 12 minus 8, and x will be equal to what? 4. What you are doing is that you're adding the additive inverse to the other side. So you see that in seconds you have cleared the problem. Now look at another one. X minus 3 equal to 15. What's the additive inverse of 3? Of minus 3 is plus 3. So it will be x equal to what? 15 plus 3. I hope you are seeing that part of my board. All right. So that will be x equal to 15 plus 3. And that will be what? 18. So you see that the concept of additive inverse and multiplicative inverse is so important in this issue of equations. Now I'll do now some on multiplicative inverse so we can strike a balance. So all those ones you are struggling, it's just multiplicative and additive inverse they are playing with. So 1 over x equal to negative 4. So what will x be? X will simply be what? If I'm going to move this to the other side, I'm going to multiply by its what? Multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse of 1 over 5 is simply what? 5. So x will now be what? Negative 20. Let's do one more. Let's say I have negative 4 over 7 x equal to what? 3 over 21. How do you handle a question like that? What is the multiplicative inverse of negative 4 over 7? Remember that we said that for this, the sign will not change. It will remain the same. But the order, so this is just the x equal to 3 over 21 times negative 7 over 4. 3, 1, and my final answer becomes what? Negative 1 over 4. Are you seeing that? So that's the concept of additive and multiplicative inverse. I would stop here for today. I would want to go beyond this idea because you just added something new. There are other ideas too from other textbooks I want us to look at. So the topic is not done. That's why you've not written the test yet. You are not done yet with this. So you are owing me 2 tests now. 2 serious tests. So make sure you're ready.